Welcome back to the today $1 million Tipping Point podcast. As a reminder, we have a great email community, the Tipping Jar of Wisdom. You get sneak peeks at guests before it airs, and you have actionable items each week that you can use to grow your business. Today, we have Cara McDonald on the show. Cara McDonald is the founder and CEO of Content Matterz, Matters with a Z at the end, a content marketing agency that focuses on helping software and SaaS marketers. SaaS is SaaS, capital S's, and it stands for Software as a Service. SaaS marketers navigate the waters of complex buying journeys with fantastic content. Cara's favorite day is when she gets to do some writing, talk to amazing people, and help a marketer achieve success. Marketing is a ridiculously difficult job, and Cara and her team are just so jazzed when they can make it just a little bit easier. When Cara is not cooking up great content, she's working on her own young adult novel. Yes, she writes in for her job and for her downtime. She loves words, working on her powerlifting skills, and trying to get her teenagers to think she's still cool. She is, right? That last part was one of the most fun bios I've ever read. I was playing around with it earlier. So anyway, welcome. Before we start, I have to jump into this young adult novel because I read a lot and I actually read young adult novels. So what is it about?
I love it when I meet other grown adults that also read young adult because I'm obsessed with it, and I'm not sure why, but I have been working on a novel, and I'm not going to say because it's like embarrassingly long time period. It's just writing a book is so incredibly hard, and of course I'm like running a business and raising children and all of that at the same time, so I try to give myself a break about that. But yeah, I'm writing it's an adventure story about fairies, and it's a ton of fun, and it's just a wonderful world to escape into when business is hard and parenting is hard, and they're always waiting for me there to disappear too.
So it's fantasy.
It is fantasy.
That's the only young adult novels I read. So if you ever want someone to read through it and just kind of like give you tidbits back to you, I'd be happy to, because
be careful what you say.
I'm dead serious. I've actually done it. So I have like another section of my life where I'm on WordPress, and I've actually had people where like will send me their novels, and like I'll just like give feedback, just like because I'm like a casual reader, but I read a lot of fantasy and young adult fantasy. So hit me up if you want me to. So anyway, back to what we really need to talk about. Content Matterz. Let's talk about how you got here. I noticed that on LinkedIn you went to UMass Amherst for your master's. Did you actually go, or did you do it online? Because I live in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I did it online from the West Coast of the US. Online school before it was cool, and normal. And everyone kind of gave me a lot of side eye about, well, that's not a real degree. And now it's like, obviously everyone's doing it. And so it was a great experience. UMass I thought doing it online was even more immersive than being there, but it was perfect. I was pregnant and I was working and all of this. So doing it online was great.
So let's talk about your corporate career before you went into, figuring out how to start your own business and being an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I worked in sort of tech and services company for my entire career. And I was about 15, 18 years or so working in-house marketing at a variety of companies. And I played a lot of different roles, and I learned a lot through that career. I went through 3 layoffs during that period, where one when I was pretty young, and one when I was like pregnant, and one when I was the very last one where I said, you know what, I'm sort of done with having my career be in the hands of other people, and I just want to do the work I want to do and work with the people I want to work with and not have to go through another interview process. So I started a company.
So is this common then in marketing agencies to have layoffs?
It's very common in marketing, period. Marketing is, anytime the economy dips, it gets perceived as overhead because, you're not directly driving revenue, though I take a lot of issue with that. And so it feels like an easy cut whenever like something goes wrong in a company. It's always marketing people first.
How do you even track your results in marketing?
It's actually pretty complicated. The world of marketing has evolved a lot in the last 20 years. It's a lot more trackable than it used to be, but it changes every single day. We all know that like when you go to a website and then 10 minutes later you go on Facebook and whoop, there's an ad for that website you just visited. All of that is happening. There's a lot of tech happening in the background that is, tracking all of this data. But privacy laws are changing daily, and there's a ton of shifting footing going on in marketing. And sometimes I think we have to go back to the old school world of, in Mad Men days, they placed an ad in a magazine and, they ran a campaign and, revenue went up later. And you have to just sort of assume that there was a cause and effect there. So there's some art, there's some science, and there's some faith in a way that, all of this actually does make a difference. It does matter. And, we get a little too data focused these days because there is a lot of data at hand and there is a lot to do to track everything. But that's not everything. And there's a whole lot more to the big picture than even the numbers on the spreadsheet.
I am actually probably one of those few people that like the ads. I get like excited when I'm like, oh yes, I was just talking about this. My phone was listening to me. Oh, thank you. I will click on this and go buy it. Like it is a little unnerving when it first started happening. I was like, oh, that's creepy. But then I started being like, but that I do want that. So thank you.
Well, I mean, wouldn't you rather receive ads for stuff that you like than random stuff that has nothing to do with you? I mean, I like it when I see ads that I feel like are things that I want to see. So I don't know. Yeah.
I did have a crazy experience once where I was doing research for a client. They were doing like a gender reveal party or something. And a lot of the stuff directed me to Pinterest. I mean, it's not, I guess it's marketing, but anyway, and directed me to Pinterest, more like apps, I guess. But then Pinterest thought I was pregnant. And like, it was creepy though, because then it started timing all the suggested like posts to me based on like, oh, you would have a baby now. Okay, so this is like newborn sleep hacks. And then it went on for a while. It was actually really weird. And I was like not pregnant at all. I was just like, oh, okay. So how did that affect your mindset being laid off, 3 times from different companies? And some people would just jump right back into applying again, going through the interview process, getting another job. What made you stop and say, okay, actually, I'm going to start my own thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did that initially. The first 2 times I sort of got back on the horse and went out there and found a job because that's, what you're sort of conditioned to do, right? Is just go get another job. And each time I landed someplace better. I made more money and got a better position. So I always felt like I landed in a better place after those layoffs. But I think with the last one, it was really about the company that I left, that I worked at, the last step before I started my own company was smaller. And it had an incredible culture. And I was sad to leave it. And I thought to myself, I'd been at other companies where less good on the culture meter. And I didn't want to take the risk of going to another place like that sort of leaves baggage on your soul. And so I thought, let's give this a try. I mean, the one thing about starting a marketing business is that there's not a lot of overhead. You can just sort of hang out your shingle and call some people and say, here's what I'm doing now. And, do you want to hire me? It was just me at the beginning, kind of almost with a freelance kind of model, even though I always intended to grow to actually be an agency. I didn't want to just be a solo. I thought, okay, well, I've got severance and I've got unemployment as my like backup dollars and a little bit of savings. Like, let's give us a few months and I can always go get a job. I was employable. So, why not give it a whirl to see if this could be a better path.
And for 7 years, it has been a better path. Have you ever thought about throwing in the towel? Have there been moments where you've been like, oh, this is really hard, I should get a job?
Oh, well, I mean, I think any business owner has always like had those late night, is this really worth it conversations with yourselves. There are always, I mean, there are hard things to do as business owners. Like, so, I mean, it is definitely the hardest thing that I've ever done. But that challenge and that reward, it's the hardest thing, but it's also the most rewarding thing. So, that's the part that keeps you going, is that, yep, there's probably super lows, but there's also going to be a high around the corner that will pull you through.
How long did it take you to reach your first 100,000?
I think I reached that in year 2.
Okay.
So I opened my company in May of 2015. And by the end of that year, I had made as much as I was going to make, as I would have made at the job that I had left. So I felt like that was a pretty big win for me, because I was able to kind of replace the income that I had potentially lost. And then I think the next year I doubled that amount. And so I probably, I think I landed at like 136 or something in my second year.
So then what was the time difference between your first 100 to 500,000 and then from 500 to $1 million?
Let me think. About 100 to 500,000. I'd say that the evolution, so I think in year 3, I hired my first employee, and I think we ended the year at about 400,000. And then in year 4, it was 600,000. So somewhere in the middle there, we crossed the line of 500,000. And we stayed with just us 2 people running that show for a really long time. And we used contract workers to weather the ups and downs, because service businesses are very comes and goes. And also different types of projects come along where you need different types of skill sets. And so we really, Chloe, who was my first employee, is still with me today. She's now our director of operations. We take on the world by ourselves, and really, just stayed the 2 of us for I think the first 5 years of the journey.
And so then how long from there did it take to jump to 1 million?
Let's see. I think it took 5 years. From when the company opened, we crossed 1 million.
That's impressive. What made you decide to hire Chloe as an employee and not a contractor?
Yeah, it was, that was actually a really hard decision. And when to hire your first employee, I think, is actually a very difficult point for a lot of people, because you have to, especially in a service business, different types of organizations, maybe this is easier. But for me, it was, I had to be sure that I had enough ongoing revenue to be able to pay her salary. And I lost some sleep, in the week leading up to pulling that trigger and actually hiring her, to, that I was so worried. I don't ever want to have to let someone go. So, it was a big deal for me to do that. And I chose to hire her because I needed someone who could kind of do a lot of different things, and and who was kind of always going to be dedicated to my company, which freelancers, you don't have that like assuredness that they're going to stick around, and they don't have to. Obviously, they're not counting on you for a paycheck per se. So I think I had done it for a couple of years on my own, and I really wanted someone to ride along. Like, I know, it's pretty lonely to do that by yourself, and I needed a partner in crime. And I had worked with Chloe at my previous company, so I already knew her,
Oh,
and
good.
that made it a lot easier.
How did your team grow from Chloe to, the team? I counted 13 people on your webpage. I don't know.
Yes, that
That's
is
right.
correct.
It was
Yeah.
so cute. For those of you who go to Cara's webpage, and she has this team photo, like a Zoom screenshot with
Yeah.
everyone with like the different app. Like, how do you even explain that when you put on
Yeah,
the
the Zoom
filter,
filters.
the
Yeah,
Zoom filter, and there's like animals and hats and like, oh, it's so cute. So how long did it take to just kind of, was there like almost like a tipping point, pun intended? Was there a tipping point where you're just all of a sudden like everyone, you're like, oh
yeah.
my God, we need all these people if we want to grow and we want to scale, and let's just start hiring? Or was it just slow and steady wins the race?
Yeah, I think actually the tipping point came really at the end of last year, for us, because we had, let's see, in October of 2021, we only had 3 people, and now we have
Okay.
13. So it's been a year, and we went from 3 to 13 in this last year. And this has undoubtedly been the hardest year of being in business because of all of that. And we are, and some of the hiring was intentional to really drive growth. I think up until I think it's funny because the topic of this podcast is the tipping point of $1 million, but because it was actually a tipping point for me. It was like a mental shift that happened when we crossed that threshold. And I think up until that point, I hadn't really been thinking about it as, oh, this is a thing that I could sell someday. This is a business I can actually grow into something big and great and sizable. I had just been kind of riding the wave of, my growth just hadn't been very intentional. It was just sort of like, oh, when people want to hire us, they come and they talk to us and we do the work and we do a good job, and that's that, right? And I think after we crossed that threshold and I thought, oh, this is like a thing that could be worth something someday. I don't know that I'd ever allowed myself to think about that before then. And that changeover really made a difference to me. And after that point, it's like, okay. And then I started making 5-year plans and like, oh, what if I do want to sell this someday? Like, what do I want to get for it? When do I want to sell it? What do I need to grow it to in order to, make my dreams come true, and potentially, be able to, do that for some of the people who have been with me the whole time. So, it was just, it really was a tipping point. And so this year has just been all about making that happen. And it's been kind of a wild ride. For the first time, I think we've been kind of slow and steady wins the race in the past. And this year it's like, we ripped our jackets off and said, let's sprint. And, for better or for worse, we're on the track now. So
With this fast growth in your team, what are some important lessons you've learned as a leader, leading the company and also leading this team?
yeah. One of the things that I care about the most, I think, is that everybody is in an environment where they can do their best work. And that to me means that, people can have the workspace that is comfortable for them, the work hours that are conducive to their best, brain workings, and, adequate time off and personal balance and all of that stuff. I think as a creative business, I think it's incredibly important that everybody feel comfortable and happy in their space to be able to do their jobs in their best way possible. I think so. We've worked really hard to create that space for everyone. Agencies come with a bad reputation, and we've seen it, as we're interviewing people. People are like, yeah, but agencies, like, they work
Mm.
people to death and they don't care about you, and all they care about is billable hours, and they just, they have a terrible reputation for good reason. Like, lots of places just work people into the ground and don't care. And that's not what we're trying to do here. I don't think that's conducive to delivering great work, which is what we're all about. So I think that was first and foremost, was creating a space where everyone could be comfortable and happy and creative. But secondly, I think the learnings that I have had over, this year, so many, has been, hiring is hard, and, nobody is going to have 100% track record on that. It's really hard to know people. I think it takes about 90 days on staff before you really see who people are. And so, we've had to learn some lessons as far as, how quickly do we put people in front of clients? And because if we don't know for sure who we've got yet, if we put them in front of clients before we feel really, really ready for that, then, things could go wrong. And you don't want the client to see, something that may have not been a great decision in the back end. So it's difficult.
What advice do you have for people who are growing their team, that want to grow their team, because out of everyone I've interviewed, the common theme is always, if you want to reach $1 million, you got to start having a bigger team. But there's so many challenges you face when growing a team. So what's one big piece of advice you would have?
I would challenge that you don't necessarily need to grow your team to get to $1 million. And we got to $1 million with 2 people.
That's still a team.
Still a team. True. not no one. But I think that it depends on the business that you're in. For us, contract workers were incredibly valuable to us and allowed us to take on more work in a low risk way. It allowed us to have that way to grow without hiring.
Well, I guess I should maybe rephrase that, because I have interviewed people who only work with contractors and they still refer to them as their team.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Maybe I should make that distinction. Like, when I'm saying a team, I'm not necessarily meaning just employees. I'm meaning anyone you hire on to help with your work.
Yeah. So I think for people, if you're looking to grow your team, is to, I think one of the things that we learned the most this year was that you need to start early, because you can't expect to hire someone and have them be 100% productive day 2. And that it takes a while to train them and help them even orient to what it is that you do, and be ready to, be fully functional, whether they're a contractor or an employee. And they're going to represent you, they're going to represent your brand. And so you want them to be ready before they hit the ground. So I think that this is one of the hardest things, because you have to basically be able to predict the future and say, okay, how much business am I going to have 3 months from now when that person will be ready to roll? Will I be able to support that person at that point in time? Yeah, hope so. But what I found too, though, is that hiring, that I think when it was just the 2 of us, sometimes I would pull back from doing business development efforts or going to find new clients, because I was busy and I was doing all the work myself, or I was managing contractors, and I was, when I feel overloaded, like, I'm not going to go do those crucial growth things. And so by having a team and knowing that I had capacity to take on new work, and that I needed to fill that capacity, it's definitely a driver for going and doing those crucial things that will help you grow your business, which is, finding new clients, thinking proactively about the future and all of that. So for me, there was like a mental safety factor where it was like, yeah, right, we bring new business in, we can totally handle it because we've got all these people ready to roll.
How do you bring new business in? Is it through marketing, since you're obviously really good at marketing? Is it through that, or is it referrals at this point, or a little of both?
It's a little bit of both. I think up until, 5 years or in or so, we were riding the referral train, which is pretty decent. Like, that still brings us a lot of work these days. Marketers move around companies a lot. And so, we make a great relationship with someone at one company, they end up leaving, they go to a new one and they hire us there. That's happened a lot. But we're also, you would think that as a marketing company, we would do so much marketing for ourselves. And really, I think this year was the first year we even ran a campaign, or like the cobbler, what's the joke? The cobblers who has kids.
The cobbler has no shoes or something.
Yeah.
Yes. I was
Right?
actually just thinking that. Yeah.
It's so true. And it's really hard to market for yourselves. Like, it's so much easier to do it for other people. But when we just, obsess over it too much, I think, and then it holds us up. So we're definitely trying to turn that faucet on for real this year and make some real headway as far as building out, because referrals only take you so far. There's that is it's a finite pool for the most part, so if you want to actually grow beyond your own network, you have to start doing sales and marketing. You just can't keep relying on the referral train.
What do you think is your best marketing advice as a content marketing agency? This is a cool question.
Yeah, I mean, lots of great content. But no, I think that for people who are not in the marketing world, it can look like it's one-dimensional or easy from the outside, when actually marketing has grown incredibly complex. And there are so many different ways to reach your audience. And, usually the best answer is to reach them in multiple ways. If you really want to get to an audience, you can't just send an email. You can't just build a website. You have to do all the things, because our world is increasingly cluttery, and breaking through to get people to remember you. I think the newest numbers here that, it takes 14 to 18 times for people to see your name before it even sinks in at all, that they might remember it. Just seeing and remembering your name, that's not taking an action. That's just remembering that you exist and that they might have seen you before. And so if you think about that and you think oh, I'm going to send an email and that's going to build business, that's one. That's one. And so you've got to, continuously, try to reach those people in different places as well. It's going to be email, yes, but also, social media, LinkedIn, but also at events in person, or, through other kinds of activities, wherever your target audience is living. That's where you need to be to trying to make an impact. And so it's complicated, and it requires long-term consistent effort to stay after it.
Long-term consistent effort. That's what I always hear. And it's hard for me too. I go through stages where I'm constantly marketing myself, and then something happens at home and I'm distracted and there's a million things, and then it's 3 weeks of nothing.
Right.
Right. Thankfully I have someone I've hired who does my social media marketing, but that's the bare minimum, right? It's just something that goes out there. So I'm happy it's there when I have these moments of nothing.
Cool. Yeah.
But I do try to be more myself online and get people interested in things. But yeah, I think it is one of those hard things. when we think about, a company bringing in $1 million, there's obviously also a lot of investments that you have to make. So I feel like there's this push and pull between spending money and also making money. You need a profit, but you need to invest. What would you say is the best investments you've made?
I think I'd say my best investments have really been in people. And the majority of that has happened this year, obviously, when we have hired the most. We made some calculated bets as far as, how are we going to drive the growth that we want to see. And so, it was hiring ahead of the demand, which is really just it's a gamble. It's a roll of the dice. And sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. But again, if you don't do it, you'll be caught flat-footed and not able to either provide the services for the, the growth that you're driving, or, won't be able to do it in a way that's good, which is even worse. So you kind of have to take a leap of faith and, do the things that are going to create the capacity to be able to do the work.
Tell me about a time that you had an unhappy client or customer. How did you rectify it? How did you deal with it? And how did you learn from it?
Yeah. I'm looking back at a time when I was working with contractors, and I had two contractors that I had assigned to an account, and they were working fairly independently. So I wasn't 100% involved in all the things that they were doing. But one of them had not told me that she was going to be going on a trip for 3 weeks, like right in the critical kind of onboarding phase. And so, the other contractor who had been working with her sort of stepped in and did some things, but maybe not quite, like they had some miscommunications between like what they were meant to be doing. And so, a month down the line, I got a call from the head of that department, and, I got a pretty serious dressing down about how he felt like they had been bait and switched. They got one person and then they switched to another person without good communication, and that, that he liked both of them, but at the same time felt like everything had been kind of messy, and he was not wrong. And so, I think what I really appreciated about that conversation, though, was how incredibly forthright he was with me. And he was not doing it in a mean or there was no, he wasn't using conjecture or rumor or, well, I heard this and that really was terrible. He wasn't mean about it at all. And, we were able to talk it through, and, I basically told him, that, that was 100% our fault, that the communication through all of that was the missing factor. And, we could have done this a whole lot better than we did. And so we worked it out literally by the end of the conversation. And, we continued that contract for, a couple of years after that.
Oh, good.
With that contractor. But I think, like, I always think about that because so often, like, you don't get that conversation with people. It's like, we might have done something wrong and we're not even aware of the thing that we did wrong, and the client just ghosts. And I would so much rather that someone, sit us down and say, hey, that wasn't cool. That whatever that's not what we want, and, just tell me what the problem was. Cause honestly, like, we can use that to be better in the future. And, I think we can probably fix anything that someone is feeling is not working for them. But like, sometimes they don't give you that chance, and they just say, that wasn't great, so I'm moving on.
And have you ever had a client ghost you when they have outstanding payments?
Oh, well, outstanding payments. That's a whole nother category, collecting money. We could have a whole episode on that. So, what yes, we actually had a client this summer who was just a very difficult client, and she just wanted to complain about a lot of things, and talked to her multiple times. She was very confused about what she wanted, and we were trying to deliver on it, and she just kept threatening to not pay us, and finally we just said fine. It wasn't that much money. It's fine. We did twice the amount of work that we had planned to for them, and still hasn't paid her bill, and I'm just whatever.
Wasn't worth it.
Not worth it.
Along those lines, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges you've had growing the business, and how did you learn from it?
I think that the hardest part is, as a small company, just creating that awareness that we're here and that about what we do. And this is where, we've started doing, more concerted marketing efforts, because we are trying to grow beyond our immediate network and, get more new clients in the door. I hired a director of business development this year, which was very exciting for us, having somebody who's actually in charge of sales. That's not me, thank God. So that's been really helpful to have somebody 100% focused on that task of, how do we get out there more and be able to do, reach new audiences. We just did this fantastic pitching event where she had to, pitch to a panel of sales and marketing people from Meta and LinkedIn and, all these big companies. And so we got to a huge amount of exposure there, which was just super exciting for us. So it's amazing having someone focused on that.
Where do you plan to go with your business in the future? What are your plans?
Yeah, I think that we want to be the content marketing agency for software companies worldwide. I know that sounds like it's that big hairy goal, but we want to be the go-to for that. We chose this niche because, well, we had a lot of experience in software, and that is one of the most complex marketing motions out there. Selling software is a big, complicated puzzle of things, and requires a lot of content to get people to buy something. And there's no shortage of software companies in the world. I always, people get scared to choose a niche because it feels like it narrows your opportunities, but it actually doesn't. It makes everything that you do more focused. And so long as that niche has a sizable number of companies in there, then there's plenty of opportunity. I always show my team this pie chart where, that shows I think there's a million, I'm not getting the numbers right, but let's say there's a million software companies in the United States, and then there are 100,000 of those are big enough to have a marketing department, which would be our target audience. So let's just say there's 100,000 target companies out there for us. We have this tiny sliver of those. So we have this enormous opportunity to capture those 99,537 other companies out there. And that's plenty of opportunity for us to go after. And when we're that targeted, our messages can be so much more on point. And if you think about how comfortable it is to come to hire an agency that is specific to your industry, we already know what your challenges are. We already know how to reach your customers, and we already know, content strategy that really works in this space. So it's an easier sell once we, get exposed. So that's what we're trying to do.
I meant to ask this earlier, but I forgot. How does content marketing differ, or what can you just tell us what it is? Because, there's like PR, social media marketing, and then you just hear about marketing in general. What, what specifically is content marketing?
Yeah, marketing is turned into, it's like the hospitals with you've got this kind of doctor and that kind of doctor, and this, everyone's got a specialty. And so content marketing is, it's the practice of educating your potential customers through written materials. And the way that this works is, I always kind of use this example. If you were selling fitness equipment, for example, you could send out your advertisements that say, yes, we have the best treadmills in the world, and anybody who's looking for a treadmill would, maybe be interested in that, right? However, if you sent out something if you publish materials on health and fitness, or how to lose 10 pounds, or, any number of other kind of broader topics, and you attract in the people who are just trying to improve their health or lose weight or any of those categories, now you're not just getting the people who are interested in treadmills, you're getting people the broader audience of those who are interested in health and fitness. And then once they've come to you, then you can start saying, well, what's really great for health and fitness, it's a treadmill. And by the way, we have the best ones ever, so you've given them something, you've educated them, you've provided information, and made yourself a resource to them, and helped them get where they need to go. And along the way, helping them understand that your product is the best way to get where they need to go.
So it really is all about the words.
It's all about the words. It's all about the words. And, compared to PR is like kind of actually an extension of content marketing. PR is just about getting in the news. It's about getting your story out there in articles and in speaking engagements and other things. So it really is an extension of content marketing. It's the same thing, different flavor, but it's all about getting those gets. You have to make relationships and, get your stories published and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a real skill.
What advice do you have for other women as they grow their business and as they want to hit this $1 million tipping point? And why do you think some women hit roadblocks and just can't really make it there?
Our team is predominantly women. We're 12 women, one very patient man. Everyone they have to have faith in themselves and not believe the mythology that women can't do this. And I know it's there's a lot of women empowerment stuff out there, but we spend a lot of our time in leadership here, reassuring people that they've got it, that they should trust themselves. And I think when women go to start businesses or grow businesses or try to get to that next level, you have to kind of overcome this. Yeah, but is that really for me? Should I really do that? Can I do that? Shouldn't someone else do this better? No, nobody knows what they're doing out there at all. So you might as well do it. Do it. It's fun. You've got this. You can do it. There's just take the leap.
Have you faced any hurdles specifically as a woman trying to grow your business?
I think that for sure we've seen, working with certain clients that shall remain nameless, that there's inherent biases that we see all the time, where we're trying to, we might work with a marketer on a team, but then we have to, sell something to the CFO or CEO or someone who, we're just often fighting against kind of that inherent doubt. I think that happens sometimes when women are in positions of authority, and our employees often have that role. Like we're giving advice, we're strategizing on behalf of people, and we've I know I've seen it time and time again in my career, where you're in a room pitching an idea to 99% men, and they don't ask the same questions of you that they do to men. You don't get that like automatic in that sometimes the men do. Like if they just speak in a loud voice and act with authority, people just go, yeah, you totally know what you're talking about, Mr. X, and they don't give that same assumption of knowledge to women. And so we just have to be better.
And how do you feel like, though, when you leave a meeting like that? Do you say, well, that's not the right client for me anyway? Or have there been moments where you've been like, no, but I do still really want to work with them?
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of a fact of, it's a fact of life out there, especially at the larger companies, that we're going to hit up against it. And sometimes, like our direct contact client also is often a woman, because we work in marketing, which is like 70% women. And, we actually feel like we can be that support system to our clients, because they're dealing with it. They're trying to get their ideas pushed forward, their budgets approved, all of that too. And so, we can be that, help behind the scenes to make them look good, and to give them the things that they need and prop them up to be able to do their job better and to break through those barriers, because it is hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Can you tell us a little bit about where we can find you, and if you have anything on your site that you want to share?
Yeah. So you can find us at contentmatterz.com, and that's matters with a Z. The Z has become an important part of our culture. You'll see Z's on everything. So yeah, I think I would invite you to, we also have a podcast called Marketing on the Flywheel. So if you want to hear more about challenges of marketing, and we speak to other kind of marketing gurus in the industry on various topics, then I invite you to check that out. And we are, as we talked about, doing a lot of our own content and marketing. So we've got several great pieces of content up on the site where you can learn a little bit more. And we'd love to chat with you if you have a marketing challenge.
And one of them is a ebook, right? Fresh content ideas.
Yeah. So our most recent ebook is on 5 fresh content ideas. So if you're looking for something new and interesting to try in your market, check out that ebook, because it definitely gives some new ideas on the latest and greatest types of content, things that you might not have thought of using in your own marketing practices.
Do you have to refresh that like every 6 months, because marketing changes so much?
Yes, for sure. And our next ebook coming out is our what we call our turkey dinner ebook, and it's all about how to repurpose your content and to make the most out of it, because a lot of companies right now are looking at how do we do more with less. And so we talk a lot about how you can create one piece of content and spin that out into multiple things that you can use across a time period, which can be incredibly, it's efficient and it's thoughtful, and you can do so much with a great piece of content. So keep your eyes open for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. What is one philosophy, mantra, or quote that you try to run your business by?
So I think that the most important thing to my company is that if you treat people well and fairly, you can still make money. So if you're running an agency out there, like make it so people can do their best work, and that will pay dividends in the end. It doesn't cost you. It's the right thing to do.
Well, I learned something that people generally don't look favorably on agencies.
Yeah,
I didn't know
working
that.
at agencies anyways. Yeah. Like it's definitely.
So that makes sense. It aligns with your basically your mantra for your business.
Culture matters.
Well, thank you again so much. I really appreciate your time. And for our listeners, we'll include all this information in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram at Virtually Curie. You'll be able to join our email community, the Tipping Jar of Wisdom, and you'll be able to find so many fun snippets of all the guests that we've been with. So thank you again, Cara. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was fun.